Hi. So in this video, we're going to be exploring the use of loops. Okay. So what are loops? Okay, loops provide us with a way to repeat certain sections of the code. Okay, multiple times. All right. So to give you a simple example, if I wanted to print out the values 1 to all the way to 10. Of course, this seems doable with just a single cout or multiple cout statements. All right, but if I increase this to about 100 or to 1,000, then it is not very efficient, to write all of these numbers explicitly in the code. All right, and the more efficient way would be to implement it in a loop. Okay, or another example would be, for example, if I want the user to provide me with 100 numbers or 1,000 numbers, all right, and then I compute the average or something. All right, so again, to write cout cin multiple times is not very efficient, but if I could perform the whole action with just a few lines of code in a loop, it would be much more efficient. All right, so in terms of loops, all right, there are three main types of loops, all right, which we will be exploring. All right, the first one is what we call the for loop. The second one is the while loop, and the third one is the do while loop. All right, now for all of these three types of loops, when we implement them in the code, we must satisfy three important parts, okay, in the code. The first one would be the initialization value, or init, okay, initial value. Okay, what is the loop count starting from? Okay, so this initial value, basically you need a variable to store it. All right, and that will be the starting value for the loop count. Okay, the second parameter that we need to look at is the exit condition. Okay, that means when do I stop with the loop? Okay, so I must check for some condition and decide whether I should continue with the loop or exit the loop. Okay, and the third would be the increment or decrement of the loop counter. Alright, so every time I go through the loop, I will need to increment or decrement. Alright, depends on whether I'm interested in counting up or counting down. Alright, so let me go through with you how a for loop looks like. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the for loop. Okay, and in subsequent videos, we'll be looking at while and do while. Okay, so for a for loop, the structure is such that all of these three components are in the same line. So the first part of the statement would be the initial value, okay, followed by a semicolon, and then I talk about the exit condition, followed by a semicolon, and finally the increment or decrement of the loop counter. Okay, and all of this will be inside the curly braces, the code that I want to execute for the loop. Alright, so let's go ahead and implement a simple for loop so that you get the idea. Alright, so I'm going to first declare a variable. Okay, so in most reference textbooks and online resources, you will find that the loop counter variable is usually a single alphabet like I, J, K or something like that. Again, this is just something that has been followed traditionally, but you are free to use any variable name that you like. Okay, so to implement the for loop as what we just saw, the first part of the statement would be the initial value. Alright, so I can start from 0. You can start from any number, okay, but traditionally we usually start with 0. Okay, again, why we start from 0 is because in many cases loops are used concurrently with arrays. Alright, so we'll come to arrays in another video, but since loops are used with arrays and arrays indexing start from 0, alright, we tend to start the loop also from 0. Okay, so we'll come to arrays in another video. Okay, but for now we will just stick with the loops. So the first part of the for loop is the initial value of the loop counter. So in this case, I equals to 0. And then the next part of the statement is the exit condition. So I need to check for some condition to decide whether I should continue with the loop or exit. Alright, so for example, if I put I less than 5, then the last one is the increment or decrement. So I can use the I plus plus, okay, which is I equals to I plus 1. Alright, so we have seen that in an earlier video, the pre and post increment operator. Okay, so this is basically the whole structure of a for loop. Okay, the initial value, the exit condition, and the increment or decrement. And just to understand how the loop works, I'm going to just print out the value of I. Okay, just to understand the concept clearly. So value of I equals, okay, and I'm just going to print out I. So I'm going to put a backslash n over here just so that we go to a new line, and let's run it. Okay, so you can see that I, the value of I, the sentences printed out are 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so basically what happens every time, okay, based on the first initial value, I check whether I fulfill the condition. So as long as I is less than 5, I will be able to execute the statement. Okay, so when I execute the statement, then I increment, alright, and before I go to the next iteration, I check whether the condition is still satisfied. So as long as the condition is satisfied, I'm able to execute whatever statement that is within the for loop, and then I perform the increment. Alright, so when I equals to 4, alright, I print out this statement, execute this statement, and then I perform the increment. So when from 4, when I increment and I become 5, I no longer satisfy this condition, correct? Because it must be less than 5. So once 4 becomes 5, I no longer satisfy this condition, so I do not execute the for loop code and I exit the for loop. Alright, so that is why I print out only from 0 to 4. Okay, now if I were to put a less than or equal sign, then when I equals to 5, I will still satisfy the condition and I will print it out. Okay, then when I becomes 6, then I will no longer print it out. Okay, so let me just run it here. So you can see that here I go from 0 all the way to 5. Okay, so again, the starting and the exit condition are all up to us to decide. So I can put this to less than 5, for example, and I put this as 1. Alright, so I will start from 1, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so again, you can play around with the starting, the exit condition, and so on, okay, to better understand the iteration count, okay, and how to vary the starting value or the exit condition to get the correct number of iterations that you want. Okay, so always remember that if I start from 0, if I want to have only 5 iterations, I must be counting up to less than 5. Okay, so if I want start from 0 and I want to go up to n, I must always be less than n, then I keep repeating the loop. Okay, so this video gives you a good introduction to the concept of the for loop. Okay, in the next video, I will talk about the while loop. Alright, and we will be able to see how the same concepts of for loop can now be reformatted into the while loop code. Alright, so thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.